Library Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Chapter 79 The Liberation of Balvala, and Lord Balarāma's touring the sacred places. Lord Balarāma prepared himself to meet the demon Balvala. At the time when the demon usually attacked the sacred place, there appeared a great hailstorm, the whole sky became covered with dust, and the atmosphere became surcharged with a filthy smell. Just after this, the mischievous demon Balvala began to shower torrents of stool and urine and other impure substances on the arena of sacrifice. After this onslaught, the demon himself appeared with a great trident in his hand. He was a gigantic person, and his black body was like a huge mass of carbon. His hair, his beard and his mustache appeared reddish like copper, and because of his great beard and mustache, his mouth appeared dangerous and fierce. As soon as he saw the demon, Lord Balarāma prepared to attack him. He first considered how he could smash the great demon to pieces. Lord Balarāma then called for his plough and club, and they immediately appeared before him. The demon Balvala was flying in the sky, and at the first opportunity Lord Balarāma dragged him down with his plough and angrily smashed the demon's head with his club. Balarāma's striking fractured the demon's forehead, making blood flow profusely. Screaming loudly, the demon, who had been such a great disturbance to the pious brahmanas, fell to the ground like a great mountain with a red oxide peak being struck and smashed to the ground by a thunderbolt. The inhabitants of Naimisaranya, learned sages and brahmanas, became most pleased by seeing this, and they offered their respectful prayers to Lord Balarāma. They offered their heartfelt blessings to the Lord, and all agreed that none of Lord Balarāma's attempts to do something would ever be a failure. The sages and brahmanas then performed a ceremonial bathing of Lord Balarāma, just as the demigods bathe King Indra when he is victorious over the demons. The brahmanas and sages honored Lord Balarāma by presenting him with first-class new clothing and ornaments and the lotus garland of victory. This garland was the reservoir of all beauty and was everlasting, it was never to be dried up. After this incident, Lord Balarāma took permission from the brahmanas assembled at Naimisaranya and, accompanied by other brahmanas, went to the bank of the river Kaiki. After taking his bath in this holy place, he proceeded toward the river Sarayu and visited the source of the river. Traveling on the bank of the Sarayu River, he gradually reached Prayaga, where there is a confluence of three rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Sarasvati. Here also he took his bath, and then he worshipped in the local temples of the demigods and, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, offered oblations to the forefathers and sages. He gradually reached the asrama of the sage Pulaha and from there went to the rivers Gandaki and Gomati. After this he took his bath in the river Vipasa. Then he gradually came to the bank of the Sona River. The Sona River is still running as one of the big rivers in Bihar province. He also took his bath there and performed the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. He continued his travels and gradually came to the pilgrimage city of Gaya, where there is a celebrated Vishnu temple. According to the advice of his father, Vyāsadeva, he offered oblations to the forefathers in this Vishnu temple. From here he traveled to the delta of the Ganges, where the sacred river Ganges mixes with the Bay of Bengal. This sacred place is called Gangasagra, and at the end of January every year there is still a great assembly of saintly persons and pious men, just as there is an assembly of saintly persons in Prayaga every year called the Maghamela Fair. After finishing his bathing and ritualistic ceremonies at Gangasagra, Lord Balarāma proceeded toward the mountain known as Mahendra Parvata, where he met Parasurama, an incarnation of Lord Krishna, and offered him respect by bowing down before him. After this Lord Balarāma turned toward southern India and visited the banks of the river Godavari. After taking his bath in the river Godavari and performing the necessary ritualistic ceremonies, he gradually visited the other rivers, the Vena, Pampa, and Bhimarati. On the bank of the river Bhimarati is the deity called Swami Kartikeya. After visiting Kartikeya, Lord Balarāma gradually proceeded to Sailapura, a pilgrimage city in the province of Maharashtra. Sailapur is one of the biggest districts in Maharashtra province. He then gradually proceeded toward Dravida Desa. Southern India is divided into 5 parts, called Panka Dravida. Northern India is also divided into 5 parts, called Panka Gauda. All the important Acaryas of the modern age, namely Sankara-Ācārya, Ramanuja-Ācārya, Madhva-Ācārya, Vishnu Swami and Nimbarka, advented themselves in the Dravida provinces. Lord Chaitanya, however, appeared in Bengal, which is part of the 5 Gauda Desas. The most important place of pilgrimage in southern India, or Dravida, is Venkatachala, commonly known as Balaji. After visiting this place Lord Balarāma proceeded toward Varanasi, and from there he proceeded along the bank of the Kaveri. While going to Varanasi, he visited Shivakansi. Lord Balarāma took his bath in the river Kaveri, then he gradually reached Rangasetara. The biggest Vishnu temple in the world is in Rangasekara, and the Vishnu deity there is celebrated as Ranganatha. There is a similar temple of Ranganatha in Vrindavana. Although not as big as the temple in Rangasekara, it is the biggest in Vrindavana. After visiting Rangasekara, Lord Balarāma gradually proceeded toward Madurai, commonly known as the Mathura of southern India. After visiting this place, he gradually proceeded toward Setubandha, the place where Lord Ramachandra constructed the stone bridge from India to Lanka, Ceylon. In this particularly holy place, Lord Balarāma distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. It is the Vedic custom that when a rich visitor goes to any place of pilgrimage he gives the local priests houses, cows, ornaments and garments as gifts of charity. This system of visiting places of pilgrimage and providing the local Brahmana priests with all necessities of life has greatly deteriorated in this age of Kali. The richer section of the population, because of its degradation in Vedic culture, is no longer attracted by these places of pilgrimage, and the Brahmana priests who depended on such visitors have also deteriorated in their professional duty of helping the visitors. These Brahmana priests in the places of pilgrimage are called Panda or Pandita. This means that they were formerly very learned Brahmanas and used to guide the visitors in all details of the purpose of coming there, and thus both the visitors and the priests benefited by mutual cooperation. It is clear from the description of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that when Lord Balarāma was visiting the different places of pilgrimage he properly followed the Vedic system. After distributing cows at Setubandha, Lord Balarāma proceeded toward the Kritamala and Tamraparni rivers. These two rivers are celebrated as sacred, and Lord Balarāma bathed in them both. He then proceeded toward Malaya Hill. This hill is very great, and it is said to be one of 7 peaks called the Malaya Hills. The great sage Agastya used to live there, and Lord Balarāma visited him and offered his respects by bowing down before him. After taking the sage's blessings, Lord Balarāma, with the sage's permission, proceeded toward the Indian Ocean. At the point of the cape, known today as Cape Comorin, is a big temple of goddess Durga, who is known there as Kanyakumari. This temple of Kanyakumari was also visited by Lord Ramachandra, and therefore it is to be understood that the temple has been existing for millions of years. From there, Lord Balarāma went on to visit the pilgrimage city known as Falguna Tirtha, which is on the shore of the Indian Ocean, or the Southern Ocean. Falguna Tirtha is celebrated because Lord Vishnu in his incarnation of Ananta is lying there. From Falguna Tirtha, Lord Balarāma went on to visit another pilgrimage spot, known as Pankapsarasa. There also he bathed according to the regulative principles and observed the ritualistic ceremonies. This site is also celebrated as a shrine of Lord Vishnu, therefore Lord Balarāma distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. From Cape Comorin Lord Balarāma turned toward Kerala. The country of Kerala is still existing in southern India under the name of South Kerala. After visiting this place, he came to Gokarna Tirtha, where Lord Shiva is constantly worshipped. Balarāma then visited the temple of Arya-Devi, which is completely surrounded by water. From that island he went on to a place known as Saparika. After this he bathed in the rivers known as Tapi, Payasni, and Nirvindya, and then he came to the forest known as Dandakaranya. This is the same Dandakaranya forest where Lord Ramachandra lived while in exile. Lord Balarāma next came to the bank of the river Narmada, the biggest river in central India. On the bank of this sacred Narmada is a pilgrimage spot known as Mahismatipuri. After bathing there according to regulative principles, Lord Balarāma returned to Prabhasa Tirtha, where he had begun his journey. When Lord Balarāma returned to Prabhasa Tirtha, he heard from the Brahmanas that most of the Kshatriyas in the battle of Kurukshetra had been killed. Balarāma felt relieved to hear that the burden of the world had been reduced. Lord Krishna and Balarāma appeared on this earth to lessen the burden of military strength created by the ambitious Kshatriya kings. This is the way of materialistic life. Not being satisfied by the absolute necessities of life, people ambitiously create extra demands, and their legal desires are checked by the laws of nature, or the laws of God, appearing as famine, war, pestilence and similar catastrophes. Lord Balarāma heard that although most of the Kshatriyas had been killed, the Kurus were still engaged in fighting. Therefore he returned to the battlefield just on the day Bhimasena and Duryodhana were engaged in a personal duel. As the well-wisher of both of them, Lord Balarāma wanted to stop them, but they would not stop. When Lord Balarāma appeared on the scene, King Yudhishthira and his younger brothers Nakula and Sahadeva, as well as Lord Krishna and Arjuna, immediately offered him their respectful obeisances, but they did not speak at all. The reason they were silent was that Lord Balarāma was somewhat affectionate toward Duryodhana, who had learned from Balaramaji the art of fighting with a club. When the fighting was going on, King Yudhishthira and others thought that Balarāma might have come there to say something in favor of Duryodhana, and they therefore remained silent. Both Duryodhana and Bhimasena were very enthusiastic in fighting with clubs, and, in the midst of a large audience, each very skillfully tried to strike the other. While attempting to do so they appeared to be dancing, but nonetheless it was clear that both of them were very angry. Lord Balarāma, wanting to stop the fighting, said, "My dear King Duryodhana and Bhimasena, I know that both of you are great fighters and are well known in the world as great heroes, but still I think that Bhimasena is superior to Duryodhana in bodily strength. On the other hand, Duryodhana is superior in the art of fighting with a club. Taking this into consideration, my opinion is that neither of you is inferior to the other in fighting. Under the circumstances, there is very little chance that one of you will be defeated by the other. Therefore I request you not to waste your time fighting in this way. I wish you to stop this unnecessary fight." The good instruction given by Lord Balarāma to Bhimasena and Duryodhana was intended for the equal benefit of both of them. But they were so enwrapped in anger against each other that they could remember only their long-standing personal enmity. Each thought only of killing the other, and they did not give much importance to the instruction of Lord Balarāma. Both of them then became like madmen in remembering the strong accusations and ill behavior they had exchanged with each other. Lord Balarāma, being able to understand the destiny awaiting them, was not eager to go further in the matter. Therefore, instead of staying, he decided to return to the city of Dvaraka. When he returned to Dvaraka, he was received with great jubilation by relatives and friends, headed by King Ugrasena and other elderly persons, who all came forward to welcome him. After this, he again went to the holy place of pilgrimage at Naimisaranya, and the sages, saintly persons and brahmanas all stood up to receive him. They understood that Lord Balarāma, although a Kshatriya, was now retired from the fighting business. The brahmanas and sages, who were always for peace and tranquility, were very pleased at this. All of them embraced Balarāma with great affection and induced him to perform various kinds of sacrifices in that sacred spot of Naimisaranya. Actually, Lord Balarāma had no business performing the sacrifices recommended for ordinary human beings. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he himself is the enjoyer of all such sacrifices. As such, his exemplary action in performing sacrifices was only to give a lesson to the common man to show how one should abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balarāma, instructed the sages and saintly persons at Naimisaranya on the subject matter of the living entity's relationship with this cosmic manifestation, on how one should regard this whole universe, and on how one should relate with the cosmos in order to achieve the highest goal of perfection. This supreme goal is the understanding that the whole cosmic manifestation rests on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also all-pervading, even within the minutest atom, by the function of his Paramatma feature. Lord Balarāma then took the Avabhrata bath, which is taken after finishing sacrificial performances. After taking his bath, he dressed himself in new silken garments and decorated himself with beautiful jewelry. Amidst his relatives and friends, he appeared to be a shining full moon amidst the luminaries in the sky. Lord Balarāma is the personality of Godhead and unto himself, therefore he is beyond the scope of understanding by mind, intelligence or body. He descended exactly like a human being and behaved in that way for his own purposes. We can only explain his activities as the Lord's pastimes. No one can even estimate the extent of the unlimited demonstrations of his pastimes because he is all-powerful. Lord Balarāma is the original Vishnu, therefore anyone remembering these pastimes of Lord Balarāma in the morning and evening will certainly become a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus his life will be successful in all respects. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 79th chapter of Krishna, the liberation of Balvala, and Lord Balarāma's touring the sacred places.